Hi, this is a video clip to show you something that you may find useful when you're doing your homework assignment, or even when you're in the field when you use virtual servers. Right here we have the console of the virtual server, and what we'll do is we'll first of all I'll show you how to switch between the monitor mode of the virtual machine versus the console of the virtual machine. This is the console. This is this is the machine that we are dealing with, that we are using. But behind that, we can also switch to a monitor. You press Control Alt and number 2. Not on the numpad. You have to use the one on the main keyboard. Control Alt 2, and you will switch to the monitor console of the virtual machine. And here you can send a lot of different commands and work with a lot of commands that QEMU supports. One of the commands is called a save VM, load VM, del VM, and also info. Info snapshots. Right now I have one snapshot that has a tag of test. So what I'll do is I'll delete that virtual machine. And this takes a little bit of time, and then I can switch back to the other one. The snapshot at this point is not particularly useful. We'll switch back to the console of the virtual machine by pressing Control Alt 1 on the main keyboard. And what we'll do is I'll do a ls at the root folder. There's nothing here. And what I'll do is I'll create a file called stage1.txt. Touch will create an empty file with that name, so that's the easiest way I can create an empty file. After I create the empty file, I'll just ls to see that yes, I do have stage 1 at this point. So the next thing I want to do is to switch back to the monitor. Remember, it is Control Alt 2 on the main keyboard. And this time I execute a command called save VM. And you can do it without any name, which will save to the default snapshot, but it is much more helpful when you give it a name. In this case, I'll just say it is stage 1. It will take a little bit of time to save a snapshot, and now I can switch back to use Control Alt 1 to switch back to the virtual machine, and I will create another one called stage 2, and we'll name it stage2.txt. And do an ls. Now we have two stage files, and then we'll use Control Alt 2 to switch back to the console again, and we'll save VM again, and this time we'll call it stage 2. And it takes a little bit of time. And now we switch back to the console, and we'll go ahead and remove stage1.txt. ls, only stage 2 is here, and we'll go ahead and even rename that to stage 3. So mb stage2.txt to stage3.txt, and then we switch back to the monitor and save yet another virtual machine snapshot, and this time we call it stage 3. Okay, so now we have 3 stages saved, and what is really useful is I can now switch back to the virtual machine, Control Alt F1, switch back to it, and we'll go ahead and power off the virtual machine. Now, when we run the command, we normally run it as kvm-hda, to specify the disk image, and this time I'm using qcow2 instead of raw. I'll explain that a little bit later, how to do the conversion. And but I can now use -load VM and select one of the 3 stages that I have already saved as virtual machine snapshots. In other words, if I load VM stage 1, then the virtual machine will start up almost like normally, and this will take a little bit of time to restore, and it is now completely restored. And you can see that only stage1.txt is here. In other words, we have reverted the virtual machine back to stage 1. Now that is quite useful because if you make a mistake in stage 2 or stage 3, this gives you a really quick and easy way to get the virtual machine back to an earlier stage. And I can do it with stage 2. And once again, the virtual machine takes a little bit more time to start up, but when it restores back to stage 2 completely. And you can see we are now in stage 2. Let's go ahead and try stage 3. And I'm pretty sure you're convinced that this will work also. But, okay, I just used the wrong stage. And if I use the wrong stage, I don't think it will have the ability to actually get it started because there's no such thing as a stage. So we'll close that. And we'll say load VM stage 3, and the virtual machine should restore to stage 3, and you can definitely see that we are now in stage 3. We can now, with 3 stages saved, we can now restore the machine to any one of the 3 stages that we have saved, which is really handy. Because as you perform your experiments for homework assignments, you keep creating new snapshots. If you make a mistake somewhere and you need to go back to a previous step, you just need to use this method. Now I can also show you another really cool method too, because load VM can also be done in the monitor. It does not have to be done on the command line. When you do it inside the monitor, it is even more handy because you don't have to get out of the virtual machine. You can just get started right away inside the virtual machine. You can revert back to an earlier stage or an earlier snapshot of the virtual machine. So I'm in the virtual machine right now, and I want to find out what stage I'm in at this point. And you can see that I'm in stage 3, which is the last one. Basically, when you say load VM and then you specify a snapshot, that becomes the last state of the virtual machine. If you do not specify load VM, it will automatically go back to that stage. But at this point, what we can do is to press Ctrl-Alt-2 again to get into the monitor mode, and we can say load VM inside the virtual machine even when it's running. Now the only thing you have to remember is if you say load VM, you will lose any work that you have done from the last snapshot up to this point. Okay, so all that work is not going to be saved. If you want to save it first, you might want to say save VM and then give it a tag name or stage name, and then you use load VM to load an earlier stage, such as in this case we have stage 1. And then we can go back to Ctrl-Alt-1 to switch back to the console here. Unfortunately, that was not successful. Unable to handle kernel paging request. I think I made a mistake because I cannot actually load a virtual machine while it is still running. So I have to stop it first before I can do this. Alright, so I made a poo-poo here. Let's go ahead and stop the virtual machine and see if we can do it now. Ctrl-Alt-1, and now we are back to stage 1, except it doesn't really it's still stopped, so I have to go to Ctrl-Alt-2 and type continue to let the machine run again. Ctrl-Alt-1, and now we are back to stage 1. So the key is you have to stop the virtual machine first before you use load VM to load a snapshot from previous. Now, how do we know how many of these snapshots do we have? Well, there's a really quick and easy way to do it. You say info snapshots. That shows you, oops, I forgot that we are not in, okay, I forgot we were not in the monitor, so it should be done here. And we have to stop it again. So the command that we want to use is called info snapshots. and it shows us that we have 3 stages that we have there are available, and we can go ahead and load one of them. Say load VM stage 2. The trick is you have to stop the virtual machine first before you load a particular snapshot, and then we can say cont for continue, and then use Control Alt 1 to switch back to the virtual machine, and this time it is fine again. So the key is, once again, you have to use stop to stop the virtual machine before you restore or load a particular virtual machine. Now let's just say that we are done here, okay, and we are ready to delete some of the stages. So we'll stop it first. We'll load the last stage because I think everything is good up to this point. So we'll go ahead and load stage 3. And at this point, I can type continue to continue with stage 3. But I can also go ahead and delete the earlier 2 stages if that is what I want. Okay, so I can say del delete VM virtual machine stage 1, and that will get rid of stage 1. Del VM stage 2, that will delete stage 2 as a snapshot. And when I run info snapshots again, I only have stage 3. The virtual machine is still stopped at this point, so I have to type cont to continue the execution of the virtual machine. Then I can use Control Alt 1 to switch back to the main console. And it is not going. This particular stage is frozen at this point. I have no idea why. Might have to do with I keep loading different stages. So let's go ahead and quit it first. You can also use the monitor to quit QEMU, and this time I'll just go ahead and say load VM stage 3 on the command line. And here we have the virtual machine running from stage 3 as a snapshot. So I hope you find this useful. I think this is a really cool and useful feature because you can now save multiple stages as snapshots. If you need to reverse back to a particular stage, you can use load VM on the command line. I think that's the safest way to do it. It does use up some more space as you build more and more snapshots. Let me do a power off first, and I'll show you how you can use this particular feature, how you can use snapshots. In this folder, I have 2 files. You can see that one file is disk.img.raw because it is a raw file. The other one is disk.img.qcow2 because it's a qcow2 file. Now, you started off with a .raw file because that's my instruction for the earlier homework assignments. So you don't have qcow2. You probably don't want to go through the installation of the virtual server again just to get to qcow2. So how do you get from raw to qcow2? As it turns out, this is a pretty easy thing to do. So what I'll do is I'm going to delete my qcow2 file because there's really nothing that I have done so far that is important in the qcow2 version of the disk image. And then what we'll do is we'll run the command to convert it from raw into qcow2. The command to do it is QEMU-img. That's the command that manipulates disk images. And what we'll do is we'll specify the command called convert. Instead of creating, we are now converting. When you use convert, we also have to use -O to specify the format of the new file. We'll specify that as qcow2. qcow2 represents QEMU, that's the Q. Cow stands for copy on write, and 2 means version 2. And then we have to specify the input file. The input file is our only file in this folder at this point. And then we specify the name of the output file, which is qcow2, like that. And then we press the enter key. It's going to take a little bit of time because the program has to go through the raw file and then find out what changes have been made to the file system. So this will take a little bit of time, but once you convert to QCOW2, then you can also use the snapshot feature of the virtual machine. So let's take a look. You can see that now we are done converting. The raw file is still 2 GB, but the QCOW2 file, which is the result of the conversion, is only about half as large because it is only storing sector informations that it's only storing data of sectors that have been changed, and sectors that have not been changed are basically not stored, and that's why it is so it is a little bit smaller than the other one. But as you save more files, the QCOW2 file will grow. As you save more virtual machine snapshots, the QCOW2 file would also increase, and that's one reason why you want to delete snapshots that are not useful anymore. I hope you find this useful. I'm not going to make an assignment out of this because I think this is just a tool to help you do your homework assignment, so that in case you are halfway done in the class, you can just go ahead and save the virtual machine, save the snapshot, and then you can continue it later either at home or go back to the lab to continue it. The other thing you can also do is, as I said, you can use this as a backup mechanism. It works a little bit better than just backing up the entire image file because this is actually a lot more space efficient. But if you want to, you can actually copy the entire QCOW2 file as a backup. So you can say copy disk.img.qcow2, and then just give it a new name. So this way you're backing up the entire disk image. But if you use the snapshot feature, it only takes up 86, in this case 60 megabytes or so for each snapshot. So it's far more space efficient. So I hope you find this particular tip useful in your homework assignment, and I will talk to you in another video clip. Thanks for watching.